Okay, ready to get a little mind-bendy today. We're diving deep into jhanas.
Jhanas. They're these states of meditative absorption. They're described in Buddhist tradition.
And we're talking serious levels of absorption here, like way beyond your average mindfulness app. This is the mental training montage for your brain.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just about like finding a bit of peace and quiet.
Mhm.
With jhanas, we're talking about cultivating these powerful, potent states of bliss, incredible clarity,
Yeah.
and the insight. That has the potential to totally, completely reshape how you experience, well, everything really.
Exactly. It's like upgrading your brain's operating system.
Yes.
And to guide us through this upgrade, we're turning to Ajahn Brahm's Beyond. It's like he wrote the user manual for jhanas, how they work, why they're so awesome, and get this, how you can experience them yourself.
And what's so great about Beyond is how Ajahn Brahm takes these seemingly mystical states. Let's be honest, they sound kind of out there, and makes them, practical. He shows how these skills you develop in jhana, like letting go, which, by the way, can be applied to literally everything.
Yeah.
And deep focus,
Mhm.
finding that unshakable calm. He shows how all that applies to handling the chaos of everyday life. It's incredible, really.
He even uses this analogy of, get this, a gym for the mind.
I love that.
Right. You're hitting the mental weights, building those resilience muscles. We all need those, by the way.
We do.
But before we start pumping that meditative iron, there's this one principle that Ajahn Brahm keeps coming back to, and I think it's a really good place to start.
Okay.
Letting go.
It
It's like the foundational principle in the book, and it pops up again and again.
does. And it's more than just a nice idea or, some airy-fairy concept, letting go. In this sense, it really is about releasing that death grip that we all have. We have it on our thoughts, our emotions, even physical sensations. It's directly tied to reducing suffering in Buddhist thought. And, it really is about opening the door to peace.
Right. It's not about making those things disappear. It's more like,
It's like what?
okay, imagine this. You've been on this long hike, your backpack is heavy,
Oh, I know that feeling.
and you finally take it off.
Yes,
That relief, that's kind of what we're talking about here, but mentally.
exactly.
And that's where the 7 stages of meditation he outlines come in. They're like the roadmap to jhana.
Right. These stages are all about developing samadhi. You can think of it as this, this deep, attentive stillness, not just zoning out.
Yeah.
No, it's actively training your mind to be so focused, laser focused.
I'm in. Sign me up.
Each stage builds upon the one before it. It's kind of like, well, you wouldn't run a marathon if you hadn't learned to walk first.
Right. Makes sense. So, okay, if these meditation stages are our, like, training montage, we got to talk about the villains we're going to meet along the way.
Right.
Ajahn Brahm calls them the 5 hindrances.
Yeah.
They're these pesky mental states that can totally, completely derail your meditation.
Oh, yeah.
And get this, he compares them to dangerous snakes on a jungle path.
Ooh.
You have to be aware of them or you're going to get bitten.
That is such a good analogy because he's so spot on. These hindrances, they're sneaky.
Yeah.
They're really sneaky.
Yeah.
Because they're not just meditation roadblocks, right? These are the same mental patterns that cause us so much grief in our everyday lives. We're talking clinging to desires, that nagging inner critic, you know the one? Feeling scattered, doubtful, the works.
Okay, so let's break down these snakes.
Okay.
Name them, what they look like, so we know what to look out for.
Okay.
Number 1,
Okay.
sensual desire.
Yes.
Who hasn't gotten distracted by, like, the thought of pizza?
Or actually craving pizza while meditating.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
In the middle of meditating, it's like, focus,
Yeah.
pizza.
Exactly. It's anything that sort of pulls you toward those pleasurable sensory experiences. Could be food, daydreams, that catchy song that gets stuck in your head.
Oh, for sure.
And it's not about becoming totally detached, becoming this completely, unfeeling robot from the world, right?
Right.
It's more about learning to just observe those desires without being completely swept away.
Like that story Ajahn Brahm tells about his teacher, Ajahn Chah, that story, where the students were complaining about the noise outside, disturbing their meditation.
Right. And he says,
"It is not the noise that disturbs you. It is you who disturb the noise."
it's you.
It's so good. Basically saying our reactions are what create the disturbance.
100%. And that's where, that's where cultivating contentment comes in. Ajahn Brahm talks about that a lot. It's about finding that place of inner peace that isn't dependent on what's happening outside of us.
Right, because good luck controlling that noise, right?
Yeah.
It's like, world, be quiet. Not going to happen. Okay, next snake, ill will. This isn't just about, like, getting annoyed at someone cutting you off in traffic, though I feel like that happens, like, daily.
Right. It can be anything from like mild irritation to full-blown anger, resentment. And it doesn't just have to be directed outward, right? It can be directed inward.
Oh, tell me more.
Ajahn Brahm tells this really interesting story about a nun who was so close to experiencing jhāna, but she was held back by this feeling of being unworthy, undeserving of happiness.
Wow.
Her own ill will toward herself was the blockage. Isn't that interesting?
It's like that thing, we can be our own worst critics, or in this case, our own worst enemies.
Absolutely. And so to sort of counteract that ill will, what he suggests is cultivating compassion, both for ourselves, which is so important, and for others. It's about learning to forgive, to really let go of judgments, and to meet those difficult emotions with kindness.
Making a note to self, be kinder to yourself. What's the next snake? What else is on this jungle path? I need to know.
Well, this one might get you while you're trying to meditate. He calls it sloth and torpor.
Sloth and torpor.
Yeah, it's that mental fog, that feeling of being sluggish. You can barely keep your eyes open.
Oh, yes. That's me some mornings. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, my brain wants to hit the snooze button on my entire life.
Yes.
Including my meditation practice.
It's the mind wanting to take the easy way out.
Well, of course it does. It's a brain. So how do we fight that urge to just mentally check out, doze off?
Ajahn Brahm suggests a few things. Sometimes just a simple adjustment to your posture can help.
Okay.
Or bringing your attention back to the breath. He also talks about reflecting on, like, the preciousness of this life and how meditation really is this incredible opportunity to really wake up to that, to our true potential.
It's like giving yourself a little pep talk. Like, come on, brain. We can do this. Okay, what's next? What's the next snake? We're on a roll. We're clearing this path.
This next one is restlessness.
Restlessness.
Which is kind of the opposite of, the sloth and torpor.
Okay.
It's that monkey mind feeling, thoughts bouncing all over the place.
I am very familiar with this one. Very, very familiar. It's like my brain decides to have a dance party the second I try to sit still.
And it's usually fueled by, worries, anxieties about the future, or replaying old events in our minds, trying to control what hasn't even happened yet.
Ugh, the worst. How do I get off this mental hamster wheel?
Ajahn Brahm suggests cultivating contentment, learning to be present with what is, without needing to change it.
Right.
It's about finding that joy in this simplicity of right here, right now, rather than constantly chasing after something more.
It's like saying to your mind, hey, let's just chill here for a minute and enjoy the view.
Okay, final snake.
Yeah.
Final snake on this meditation path before we get to our destination. Hit me.
This one is a progress killer.
Yep.
Doubt.
Yeah, it can show up in many forms. Skepticism towards the teachings, uncertainty about your own abilities, even questioning the validity of your own experiences.
So that voice that's like, this will never work. You're just not cut out for this meditation stuff.
Exactly. And what Ajahn Brahm says is to, confront that doubt head on.
Okay.
Reflect on your own experience. Have you noticed any positive changes since you started meditating? Even those small shifts, they count.
Okay.
He also talks about cultivating faith.
Okay.
Not in a blind belief kind of way, but more like a trust in the teachings based on your own, investigation and experience. It's more about being open to the possibility that there's more to reality than we currently see.
I like that. Okay, we've met our 5 meditation snakes.
We have.
But, plot twist, Ajahn Brahm says, we all have a favorite.
We all have a favorite.
A pet hindrance, that one obstacle that just loves to trip us up.
It's that snake. Yeah, it's like always lurking right outside your meditation hut, like, I'm waiting for you.
So, self-awareness is key here.
Yes.
Know thy enemy, right. But what about those times when it feels like a whole nest of snakes is about to strike? You're surrounded, like, help. What then? Does Ajahn Brahm have a strategy for those moments?
He does. He calls it the not Gary strategy. It's really fascinating. It's based on this story about the Buddha calming a charging elephant, but not with, force, but with loving kindness.
Wow.
It's about making peace with your mind instead of, engaging in this big, huge internal battle, right?
It's like that scene in every action movie where they finally realize, I have to team up with my enemy to defeat the bigger enemy.
Exactly.
Which in this case is our own suffering. Instead of trying to suppress those emotions, we meet them with compassion.
Exactly.
Acceptance. It's like saying, all right, fear, doubt, frustration, you're here, I see you, I'm not running, we're going to hang out. With kindness, Let's see what happens.
It's a practice in radical acceptance,
I like that. Radical acceptance.
and it can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
especially for finding stability in the midst of that internal chaos.
It really is radical when you think about it. It's like instead of battling your own mind, you're approaching it with like this almost radical compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
Like instead of trying to like trap them in some mental cage, you're like, hey, snakes,
Let's be friends.
let's hang out.
Right.
But speaking of tools for navigating this like inner landscape,
Okay.
Ajahn Brahm goes deep on mindfulness.
He does. And he's not just talking about like noticing your breath.
Yeah.
This is next level mindfulness.
Yeah, it's true.
He's talking about directed attention.
Yeah.
Intentionally choosing where we want our focus to go.
Yes, exactly. He uses the analogy, and I love this analogy, of a gatekeeper deciding like who gets into the palace, right?
Okay.
Mindfulness is about deciding which thoughts, which feelings, which perceptions we're actually going to allow into our mental space.
Right.
It becomes this active practice of discernment.
Oh, I like
Instead of, it's not just passive observation. It's not just about whatever pops up.
So it's less about like silencing the mind completely
Yes,
and more about choosing which thoughts we're going to entertain.
Exactly, yeah. Which ones get that VIP treatment?
Yeah.
He gives this great example of like a surgeon
Yeah.
during like, a complex operation.
Mhm.
They're not zoned out, right?
Mm.
They are hyper-focused, deep samadhi because, hello, the stakes are high.
Right, exactly. It's brain surgery.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's the kind of focus that we can bring to meditation when we really realize how important it is. Like, this is important stuff.
It's mental brain surgery.
It is. Cultivating this inner peace is like, if not more important than any other skill.
I agree.
So important.
And he explains how this mindfulness practice evolves as we move through those meditation stages that we were talking about.
Okay.
You start with this broad awareness of the present moment, right? Just kind of taking it all in.
Okay.
And then gradually you start to zero in on the breath.
Oh, God.
And it's like you're making your attention more and more laser focused.
So as that focus sharpens, do we start to see things differently? Like, does our actual perception start to change?
Yes. He uses the example of seeing a simple leaf, like a leaf on a tree, with this newfound clarity and appreciation.
Wow.
It's like suddenly you're noticing these intricate details of something that you've walked past 1,000 times.
That's so cool. So this intensification of mindfulness,
Yes.
is that ultimately what leads to experiencing jhāna?
Yes, you got it. It's
Yeah.
like mindfulness is the pathway, and jhāna is what you discover at the end of that path.
Hmm.
This peak of stillness, incredible clarity.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, we've met those pesky hindrances,
Mm-hmm.
and we're starting to understand the power of mindfulness.
Right.
Now let's talk about the destination.
Okay.
Jhanas.
Yes.
Tell me everything.
Okay.
What's it like to be in jhana?
Well, he describes them as these deeply blissful and absorbing states, each with its own unique flavor, its own insights.
Really?
Yeah, he compares entering jhana to a child finally overcoming their fear and jumping into like a swimming pool for the first time.
Okay.
There might be that initial hesitation, a bit of a wobble, he calls it.
Okay.
But once you fully immerse yourself, it's just pure joy and freedom.
Oh, okay, so there's levels to this, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's like it makes it feel less intimidating.
It does.
Like jhana is less this big, scary, mystical thing and more like this exciting new experience that's like waiting for us to just jump in.
Exactly. He even talks about this thing called yo-yo jhana.
Yo-yo jhana.
Okay. Yeah, where you get these brief tastes, these little glimpses of that jhana bliss, but then you get so excited you pop right back out.
Oh, I can imagine that. It's like getting a sneak peek at an amazing gift, but you can't open it yet.
Exactly, exactly. But even those brief glimpses can be so profoundly motivating.
I bet.
It's encouraging. Like, keep practicing, keep going, cultivate that stability to actually, like, hang out in those blissful states for a little bit longer.
So there's a whole progression, like, through these different jhanas.
Yeah.
It's like those video games where you're, like, leveling up your skills.
Yes. Each jhana is characterized by unique quality of bliss, and it arises from these specific mental factors being present. So think of it like a staircase leading to these increasingly refined states of awareness.
Okay, I'm ready to climb that staircase.
Yeah.
What are some of the specific insights or benefits we might like experience as we move through these different jhanas?
Well, in the first jhana, there's this initial withdrawal from the senses. It's like you're shutting off the outside world and turning your attention inward.
Okay.
And it's here that Ajahn Brahm described that subtle wobble between the bliss of jhana and our ordinary kind of thinking mind.
So dipping our toes in.
Exactly, yeah. Before we go for the full plunge.
What comes next?
Well, that wobble smooths out as you transition into the second jhana. And here, there's this really profound stillness, tranquility. It's like the surface of a calm lake.
Mm.
And it's here that we experience a very deep happiness that's born of samadhi, that attentive stillness that we were talking about.
Oh, yeah, I'm starting to like this.
Right.
Okay. Deep happiness, a still mind. What's next? What's higher up on this staircase? I'm ready to do some climbing.
The third jhana is really, really interesting because that ecstatic bliss from before,
Okay.
it sort of mellows out a bit. And in its place is this really profound sense of equanimity, contentment. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the difference between the excitement of like a party
Oh, yeah.
and then the quiet joy of like watching a sunset.
So it's less intense,
Yes,
but maybe even more like deeply satisfying in a way.
exactly.
Okay, what about the fourth? This is the topper.
The fourth jhana, this is it.
This is it.
This is considered the culmination of this particular path.
Okay.
And it's a state of pure equanimity. Mindfulness, where the mind is completely free from all distractions, all desires, all attachments. Ajahn Brahm describes it as this state of complete mental purity, where the very deepest insights into the nature of reality and ultimately the self can arise.
Wow. Okay, so I have to ask, because
Yeah.
we're talking about jhana being like this path to enlightenment, and honestly, that can feel kind of daunting, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this really achievable for like regular people? Like, I work, I have a life, or is this reserved for like monks who have dedicated their lives to this?
That's such a good question. And it's something that Ajahn Brahm addresses really directly in the book. He's
Yeah.
very clear that, yes, jhanas are often associated with enlightenment, but they're incredibly beneficial even outside of that context. The mental skills that you develop, concentration, mindfulness, that equanimity, those are valuable tools for anyone who's navigating the ups and downs of life.
So even if like we never reach that fourth jhana, these practices can still have like a real impact on our everyday experience.
100%. Think about it.
Yeah.
The ability to stay calm when everything around you is falling apart.
Yeah.
To actually manage those difficult emotions instead of being, controlled by them. To find those moments of peace, even in the middle of chaos.
Sign me up. That sounds amazing.
Those are benefits, right? I mean, who couldn't use a little bit more of that?
Everyone. So it's like we're not just meditating to achieve this distant goal. We're actually meditating to improve the quality of our experience, like right now.
Exactly.
In this moment.
In this moment, yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And he says even those brief glimpses of jhana can be life-changing. Yeah, it's like they kind of broaden your perspective. They deepen your compassion. And they leave you with this incredible sense of wonder at the mystery of existence.
It's like when you catch a glimpse of a breathtaking view, and it just changes your whole perspective, right?
Yeah.
You might not be able to stay there forever, but the memory of that beauty, it stays with you.
It does.
It's true. Those moments can be so powerful. And it's like, they kind of stay with you, they linger. It makes me think about something else Ajahn Brahm talks about.
Okay.
Those scientific studies that suggest that consciousness, like our awareness, might actually exist independently of the brain.
Right. He gets into some pretty mind-bending stuff there. He even talks about his own experience after a deep meditation session where, get this, the answer that came to him was simply, there is nothing. It's like he's pointing to this ultimate emptiness.
Yeah.
Like at the heart of everything.
Yeah.
Even ourselves.
It's like those moments where in meditation when your thoughts just kind of like dissolve and you get this glimpse of like pure spacious awareness. Like it's always been there, right?
Yes.
Just beneath the surface of all that mental chatter.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us to another really captivating concept from the book, nibbāna.
Okay.
And the way he describes it is so interesting. He uses this analogy of a box that just like switches itself off.
Okay.
And it highlights how nibbāna, this state of ultimate liberation, it's not really a thing.
Right.
It's not like you achieve it. It's more of a cessation.
Yeah.
It's a letting go of everything that keeps us, trapped in that cycle of suffering.
So it's not about adding more. It's not about like achieving some blissful state or like going to some heavenly realm.
Right.
It's about the complete and total liberation from suffering.
Yeah.
That actually makes it feel more attainable, I think.
Yes.
Knowing it's not about like, oh, I need to add this to my to-do list.
Yeah.
It's about letting go.
It's the ultimate letting go. It's that paradox,
Yeah.
right? This incredibly profound state of peace, of freedom, But it comes from surrender, not striving.
Yeah.
Like we were saying earlier about letting go, it's like the ultimate act of letting go.
Okay, so we've covered so much. I have to ask, though, if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to experience this for myself,
Yeah.
where do we begin?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Well, Ajahn Brahm is a big proponent of breath meditation, or ānāpānasati, as like the foundation, the basis for cultivating jhāna. And he's very clear that it's not about forcing the mind into stillness, but more like gently guiding it back to the breath again and again and again.
It's like training a puppy, right? You don't punish the puppy for like wandering off. You just patiently coax it back every time.
Exactly. You're cultivating that same kind of patience and gentleness with your own mind. And this is a practice. It's not a performance, right?
Right.
So there will be days when, yeah, our minds are like that wild puppy. You know, they're just all over the place. But that's okay. The important thing is to just keep coming back, keep cultivating that kindness towards ourselves and our experience.
It's like building a muscle. It takes time,
It does.
consistency, and a whole lot of patience.
And compassion, too.
And compassion, but like the more you practice, the stronger you become.
For sure.
And speaking of strength,
Okay.
Ajahn Brahm tells this amazing story about like this meditation teacher who used archery as like a metaphor for training the mind.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about this.
Okay, so the teacher instructs his students to meditate on hitting, get this, a tiny target,
Okay.
the left eye of a bird.
Wow.
And the first two students, total fail.
Okay.
They're getting lost in thought, or they like lose sight of the target completely. But the third student, the one who'd really mastered concentration, bam, hits the mark perfectly.
It's like that old saying, where attention goes, energy flows.
Yes, when we can harness that.
Right.
When we develop that one-pointedness of mind,
Right.
we become capable of like achieving things we never thought possible. And I love that he's not even just talking about literally hitting targets. It's about hitting the target of our own minds.
Right.
Reaching that place of deep concentration where those profound insights, those realizations can occur. It's like we're training our minds to become these like powerful instruments.
Powerful instruments.
Capable of cutting through illusion and seeing reality with incredible clarity.
Yes.
And one of the tools that Ajahn Brahm talks about for cultivating that clarity is loving kindness.
Metta.
Metta, yes. He's such a proponent of metta meditation as a way to like soften the heart, dissolve ill will, and connect with that universal love that exists, you know, within all beings.
And it starts with ourselves, right?
It does.
We can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
So we need to fill ourselves up first.
Exactly. And he offers this beautiful guided meditation actually in the book,
Yeah.
where you start by directing loving kindness to yourself, and then you slowly like widen that circle of compassion to include like loved ones, neutral people, and even those difficult people in your life, and eventually all beings everywhere.
It's a beautiful practice.
It really is. Okay, so we have our breath meditation, our loving kindness practice, this theme of letting go that like runs through everything.
It's like he's given us this incredible toolkit
He has.
for not just like surviving, but for really thriving in this life.
Yes. And one of the most like inspiring takeaways for me is that this path of like cultivating jhāna, it's not about escaping from the world.
Right.
It's not about becoming some like superhuman as enlightened being. It's about taking all that peace, that wisdom, that compassion, and bringing it back into the world, into our relationships, into our work, into our everyday messy lives.
Yes. He even says, you don't have to go to a monastery
You don't.
to find peace.
Yeah.
You can create those sacred spaces anywhere.
A little corner in your home,
Yeah.
a park bench, even your commute if you can swing it. It's about finding those pockets of stillness wherever you can and giving yourself permission to just be present with them.
To connect with that inner peace that's always there.
Always there.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into jhāna, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this practice,
Yeah.
this path, it's not about adding more to our already very full, busy, often chaotic lives. It's about stripping away. It's about letting go of all the things that weigh us down.
Yes.
So we can finally experience that freedom, that peace, that joy that honestly has always been within us.
Yes.
And who knows, maybe, just maybe, with a little practice, with a little dedication, we might even get a taste of that complete bliss for ourselves.
And maybe, just maybe, we'll find that the journey itself is the bliss.